Should you buy a duplex or triplex and live in one unit and rent out the others? Is having a tenant pay some or all your mortgage, is it really all that it's cracked up to be? I'm Veronica Woods and welcome to the Real Estate Wisdom channel. If you're new, it's your first time here, I can promise you that I'll be always talking about topics relating to helping you on your real estate investing journey, as well as give market updates about what's going on in the housing market where I practice in Philadelphia and Delaware County in Pennsylvania. If you have ideas about new topics that you want me to cover, you want to hear my take on, feel free to leave them in the comments below, or you can also just shoot me an email, and I enjoy chatting with my viewers on these videos. In this video, I'm going to discuss how you can successfully house hack. So house hack is that act of buying a small multifamily 2 to 4 units, which counts as residential to mortgage lenders, and living in one unit and renting out the rest. I believe the house hacking term came up or was coined by somebody on the Bigger Pockets real estate investing forum. But now if you hear that term, that's what we're talking about. Now I did have another video where I was talking about the merits or how you should think about buying a single family or multifamily property and the relative pros and cons of both, but we're not going to talk about that on this video. We're going to talk about if you made the decision that this is what you want to do, you want to buy a duplex or triplex, for example, and live in one of the units. How do you pick the right one that's going to work for you in your financial situation? I came up with 5 tips to help you find the right duplex house hacking opportunity. Now, I will just give some background. I personally have house hacked, so I will give you my perspective of someone who has implemented this successfully as an investor, as well as someone who's helped other people to do so. Now, the first tip is to focus on the neighborhoods that actually have multifamilies. Now, this may seem obvious, but I do get calls from people who have ideas of living, they're focused on where they want to live, and then they're going to hunt for the multifamily inventory there. And I think it's kind of the reverse. First, you have to make sure that the zip code or neighborhood has a supply of multifamilies for you to even investigate. In the Philadelphia area and even into the suburbs, they're really clustered in more urban suburban areas, or when you get into the suburban space. So the further you go away from the city, the less of these small multifamily opportunities there are. A lot of it is a factor of zoning. So as the city governments kind of plan the design of their towns, they have ideas around where they want certain types of structures. And there are opportunities for you to potentially apply for a variance. Let's say you're looking at a over 2,000 square foot house in Philadelphia. A lot of times investors look at that as an opportunity to break that up into 2 or 3 units, and they have been able to apply successfully so that they're a legal, now transfer from a single family to a legal duplex or triplex. So those opportunities are out there, but again, you have to research how likely that would get approved. And again, you want to focus on the neighborhoods that have a higher chance of that happening, or just have homes built specifically to be a duplex or triplex. The second tip is to not rule out tenant-occupied properties. Now, of course, in order to qualify for an owner-occupied multifamily, you have to live there by closing. But there is some flexibility, and you definitely can negotiate with the seller up front about which unit makes the most strategic sense for you to live in. For example, you may want to keep the one that has either the highest rent today or the highest potential rent as a rental and you live in one of the other units so that you can maximize the income more quickly with the property. And the big benefit up front is as you're going through the mortgage process, because you have a tenant in place with a lease, you'll be able to use that income to help you qualify for the loan. So that's another added benefit. Tip number 3 is to look for homes that do not need major repairs. So not only is taking on large rehab projects more risky, especially as a newer investor, but it really limits your loan options. And if you're trying to house hack, the whole point is to be able to get very favorable down payment terms, as low as 3.5% with an FH8 home. But if the bank views or lender views the house as not habitable, you will not qualify for the loan. Yes, you could buy the property, but you'll have to put much more down, 25% or more down. So which, again, you can do it, but it kind of eliminates the whole benefit of doing the house hacking. Now, I would say just because there are tenants living in the property, I would not make the assumption that the bank would view it as habitable, especially in this environment, or looking at a house with owned by a tired landlord who just didn't keep up with the maintenance. Some of those, if any of those maintenance items are severe enough that the appraiser would notice going through, that would ruin your whole strategy. So again, it's important to focus on homes that maybe just have cosmetic updates or more minor deferred maintenance. Tip number 4 is to look for properties that already have separate utilities. Now, you can separate the gas and electric as a project, but if you have that going in, that really allows you to pass on more costs to the tenants up front. Now, in the Philadelphia area, most homes only have one water meter, so typically with a multifamily, the owner is paying for the water expense, but there are a lot of ways that you can more properly split or allocate that water expense to tenants. So again, look for ways to be able to pass on as many of your operational costs as possible to your tenants in order for you to have a good investment. Tip number 5, and the last one I'll cover on this video, is to run the numbers over the long term of the investment. I mentioned earlier that one of the most frequently talked about benefits of house hacking is to have someone pay for your mortgage, and that implies that if they don't pay 100% of your mortgage, it's not a good deal, but that's not necessarily true. Will you be cash flow positive after you leave the property? Which as you may know, that typically lenders have a requirement for you to live there 1 year. So you'll want to calculate what would the potential cash flow be after that 1 year or a few years when you leave the property. And just evaluate really your personal housing expenses. Will having someone help you pay your mortgage help you save in terms of your housing expense? So let's say that the tenant is paying all but $300 of your mortgage, but you were renting somewhere for $1,200. So that's a $900 savings that you would have by buying the duplex. And so that is something that you shouldn't discount when you're evaluating whether, buying a duplex or triplex is a good move for you. Before I wrap up, I do want to stress that it's important to talk to your lender about the fact that you're considering buying a multifamily as an option, or owner-occupied multifamily is an option, because they may need different information from you and want to kind of evaluate you differently for a single family that just you are living in versus a multifamily. And you don't want to have to kind of go backwards and do that and have that conversation when you're down the line of making an investment. Now, if you want to hear more about the things that you should talk to your lender about as you're going down the investing journey, you'll want to check out the video that's appearing on the screen now. And as always, if you have any comments or questions about anything you've heard in this video, feel free to leave them below where you're watching the video. And as always, happy investing.